Hi everyone, welcome to the June monthly meetup from Angler Singapore. So first of all, appreciate your time and your appearance today. If you live in the Asian time zone, it is even so special because it is now 11 p.m. at night in Singapore. And also thank Minko for making an effort very early in the morning because it's like 8 a.m. in the morning for Minko. So people, we have a very special meetup tonight. So the agenda today is going to be a bit similar, but there's some different, and then you will know it very soon. I promise. So I will give a quick introduction now. It's like about 2-3 minutes, and then there's a talk from Minko, and then we have Q&A, and the last part is always open announcement. It's basically you can come and say hello, or you're looking for a job, or you have anything to share, feel free. Any upcoming events, any interesting article, any library you want to give a shout out, that's all we need for the open announcement. So the code of conduct is simple because we have a speaker very nicely come to talk to us. So just be nice with the speaker and also be nice with the other. And if in case I can just bring the people out. So I have the power. So the next one is going to be the first Tuesday of July. It's going to be on the 6th of July. If it's back to normal time in Singapore, it's like 7 p.m. So still finalizing the speaker, but we have speaker lineup for August and September. So July is still considering, but I will have some info for you guys soon. And we have the Angler Singapore channel within the Angler Discord, the big community. So you can come in, have any question, answer, announcement. And the most of the content I will just upload into the YouTube channel from Angler Singapore. So the talk, after the talk, I will just upload the video as well. So you will have, you feel sleepy, you can go to sleep and then go back tomorrow and see the full talk. And the last one is like you can always book like 15-minute talk to me. It's like usually not a 15-minute. It's like can last for like 2 hours. But basically, if you need help, you need any advice. I mean, I'm not an expert, but you can feel free. If I don't have it's not my expertise, I can ask for help from other people like Joe and some other people like Sander here. But that's the idea. You can have someone to talk to if you need to. And if you wanted to speak with us, feel free, drop us a message on Twitter, or I don't know, if you want to also bring any speaker to Angler Singapore, can just let me know. I will try my best to reach out and then bring the guy in. And we will have upcoming fun we talk. So there's a Angler APAC from my friend Bonnie. It's within the Angler Nation network. So we have a lot of group here. Minko been there one time. And the upcoming one that I'm hosting like tomorrow is just back to back. I don't know, for some reason it's just happening this way. Today and tomorrow we have another meetup at Angler APAC. So feel free to joining and sign an account if you don't have. And yeah, there's a lot of content upcoming. In Singapore, we have Singapore JS, we have Junior Dev Edgy, we have Talk.cs, we have React.js, and now Angler Singapore. We have more like Vue.js, but they are quite inactive at the moment. And before we start the talk, you have any questions, just note it down so that you don't forget, or you can just drop it into the chat. Feel free to do it. And yeah, remember to unmute yourself during the Q&A section. I just encourage people to speak and get the interaction with our speaker. And yeah, with that, before I win over to Minko, I will have a speaker warm up, which is another question. So that is for you, Minko. Before we get started, another question. Sorry, today we have too much question, but I just want to make things different. So the question for Minko today is if you can choose to understand all the language in the world, or you can choose you can play all of the instrument in the world, which one that you choose and why that you select this?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I'll go with the instruments. I'll really like to like expressing yourself with music is like really powerful. So that's what I would go with, I guess. And I can play like 0 instruments right now, so this will be a big upgrade.
Nice. I also like, I think it's like when I was young, it's like my dad took me to the guitar store and then asked, "Do you want to play it?" I just like say I don't want. And then now I was regretting about my decision. If I say yes on that day, now it's gonna be different, you know.
Can you play any instruments now, or?
I think very limited. I think I was trying harmonica because it's quite easy and it is small before, but I didn't go like all the way with it. So yeah, you can consider me. I can just play Nintendo Switch.
Same here, yeah.
Yeah, with that, over to you, Minko, and thanks for joining once again.
Thank you for having me. Okay. Here are my slides. Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much for joining today. I know it's pretty late for you, for most of you, so I'm going to keep it as short as I can, and after that we can jump to Q&A and have a more in-depth discussion about the topics that you're interested in. Here I'm going to make a high-level overview about the Angular ecosystem, what we shipped as part of Angular version 12, and also what we're planning to do in the future. And we'll be briefly discussing also some community contributions. Actually, I'll be highlighting a community contribution from someone here in the meetup as well. So let's see if we're going to guess who. So my name is Minko Gechev. I'm working on Angular and Google, and I have been part of the team for the past about 2.5 years. Before that, for maybe 6 years or more, I've been just like contributing to different open source projects in the Angular community. And just I have like strong connection with open source. This is one of the things that I enjoy doing. So you know that Angular is a Google technology, I'm pretty sure. But something that we haven't talked about enough is that a lot of Google runs on Angular. In order to interact with your colleagues, you would have to interact with a lot of Angular systems along the way. So if you have to open an issue, you're going to be using a system that is developed in Angular. This is our Buganizer. This is something like Jira that we're using internally. If you want to look up some source code in our internal monorepo, which has a couple of tens of billions of lines of code, you'll be using a user interface that is developed in Angular as well. This is Code Search. It is actually an open source program that you can look up on GitHub. If you want to edit some source code, you'll be interacting with our text editor that is developed in Angular. And finally, if you want to open a CL, a change list here, or a pull request, if you prefer the Git terminology, you have to use a code review system that is developed in Angular as well. So this is part of the critical workflow of pretty much any developer or like documentation writer within Google. And there are also thousands of other applications. We have over 2,500 apps for sure. Haven't checked the number recently, but their number grows significantly fast. There are also quite a few public-facing applications. I'm often talking about Google Cloud, and I'm starting usually with Google Cloud because this is one of the biggest applications that I'm aware of. Last time I checked, it had 2 million lines of code of like TypeScript and Angular. I'm pretty sure it is way bigger right now. I just haven't checked the monorepo recently. We also have the Firebase console, Google Domains, and Google Analytics. And all the applications, they vary. They're from very small cafe applications to something like a huge public-facing app like Google Domains. And that's only part of the story. On these applications, we have a lot of developers who are involved in. For example, thousands of people are using Angular monthly. This is based on the statistics we're getting from folks who are submitting code to our Mon repository every month. And also about 1,000 engineers only within Google are taking the Angular course 101 and 201, where we're teaching the basics of Angular and TypeScript and RxJS. So a good question is why Angular is even open source if it is being successful in Google. Why Google would bother to support the hundreds of issues that are arriving in our repository and triaging them. Well, there are quite a few reasons, and some of them are just making something open and giving back to the community, but there are also good reasons for Google that Google is Angular is like being open source is helping Google to be more successful as well. For example, with hiring, when there are so many engineers outside of Google who are already familiar with Angular, like hiring them and making them productive within the company is going to be way easier. Also, the ecosystem. There are so many cool things happening in the Angular community, and I was so fortunate to see that from the outside and from the inside, that Google is able to use some of these projects as well. For example, NGRX is one of the most popular state management libraries within Google. We had Cololizer. This is a tool that I developed before I joined the team. It was part of the linting infrastructure. We have a bunch of different chart libraries. People are able to look up content that the community has developed, and it is generally a pretty powerful place. We're getting a lot of feedback. If you have seen on GitHub, we have about 24 or 23, or I think 22 as of Friday, 100 issues. And probably more than half of them are just feature requests. People are giving us feedback on what they want to see in Angular, and we're doing our best to accommodate these feature requests when they align well with the vision for the framework. Also, quality. There are thousands of people looking at the Angular code base. So these thousands of people, if they see something wrong, often they're opening pull requests. So they're helping us improve the quality of the framework overall. Today, I would want to start by talking a little bit about the ecosystem. The ecosystem consists of like hundreds of thousands of developers, both outside and inside Google. And we noticed that over the past year, the number of public NPM downloads of Angular grew from about 1.4 to 2.5 million a week, which is a significant growth given that we went through a pretty heavy period, such as COVID and a lot of other things that have been happening in the world. And currently, there are about 1.8 million GitHub projects. And by GitHub projects, I mean only open source repositories that are dependent on Angular core. Some of these projects, and these projects are quite different in nature. For example, here is a project that I was going to highlight, the Spotify player by Trang Vo. And this is an example of not only a production-ready application, but something that you can look up, something that you can explore if you would want to learn how to build more advanced Angular apps, if you want to get familiar with more advanced concepts. It is available on his GitHub account. We also worked with Harvard on a system that helps them visualize the results for their research for finding an antiviral for COVID. We worked with them for a couple of months in order to help them make this user interface perform faster so that the rendering is smooth. And it was a huge privilege to be actually able to collaborate with them. I learned a lot of cool things. I had no idea what I was working on at first, but over time, they explained to me the basics, and it was fascinating. Folks such as Manfred, for instance, are working on improving the infrastructure that we provide. So Manfred has been building tools based on the Angular CLI to provide utilities for micro frontends with module federation. And we have been also collaborating with the folks from NG Zoro on ensuring that we have an image component that aligns web with core web vitals and make sure that you don't have significant cumulative layout shift with delays. You have largest contentful panes that has decent metric, and so on and so forth. These are just some of the examples. We have been also working closely with Scully, with NGRX, with NGX charts, and so many other amazing projects out there. And talking about performance here, though, we have been having a strong partnership with Chrome as well. We're part of the Chrome Web SDK effort, where we're making sure that frameworks have good characteristics so that they can perform well according to core web vitals. We have been working closely not only with Chrome, but also with Vue, and from there with React, in order to make sure that we're introducing a consistent set of optimizations, for example, inlining of critical CSS, so that the entire ecosystem can benefit out of it. Core Web Vitals is essential currently because it is part of the search ranking algorithm. So in order to perform well in terms of SEO, you'll need to be performing well in terms of performance as well. The implementation of largest contentful paint was one of the major efforts that we worked on together with Chrome, so that we can make sure that hydration is properly reflected. Doesn't matter whether you're using more constructive, like incremental hydration by attaching event listeners, or destructive. This would, for example, not make a difference for the final result for the metric. Optimizations that we worked on are inline of Google fonts, extraction of and inline of critical CSS, production builds by default, and actually quite a few others, including differential loading for some frameworks that did not support that from the beginning. In terms of Angular and SEO, you can learn about this case study by Crunchbase. They shared their story on why they switched from a legacy Ruby on Rails platform to Angular and Angular Universal, and how this benefited them in the long run. All right, so let us talk about what's new in version 12. When I'm talking about version 12, I'm usually grouping things in two main categories. First, making sure that Angular stays relevant with modern standards and simplification, and also a couple of feature drops or new features that we introduced in the process. We also developed some new tools, which we can put into the second category, but since we had a pretty big release 2 weeks ago, I would want to talk about them separately. So modern standards and simplification. We have been willing to present Angular as a modern and evergreen framework, where just by using the Angular CLI, you'll be able to take advantage of the incremental improvements that we're making on a regular basis. And some of these improvements require us to deprecate certain APIs because they're no longer relevant in the web platform, let's say. A couple of deprecations that we made as part of version 12 are IE 11 and the deprecation of view engine. For IE 11, we run an RFC where we collected feedback from the community in order to see whether this is going to be a painful decision if we move forward with. And while the vast majority of people was very excited that we'll be able to move forward from IE 11 and we'll be able to support evergreen browsers only that are would allow us to use features such as, let's say, CSS variables. The deprecation of view engine is something that I would want to spend a little bit more time talking about. If you're familiar with Angular, you know that we had the previous rendering and compilation pipeline known as view engine. And now in version 9, which happened in 2020, I can't believe it feels like forever ago, we released Ivy. That is a new way to build applications and a new rendering. Pretty much this is no change for most folks. This is just like a change that happens under the hood. In order to ensure, though, that applications that are working properly with View Engine before, they can continue taking advantage with View Engine in the future. And folks who are not yet feeling comfortable making the change to be able to stick to View Engine in the long term, we introduced the enable Ivy flag, and we kept it for a couple of major releases. But we noticed that fewer and fewer people are actually opting into using View Engine or opting out of Ivy. You can see on this chart that maybe just a couple of folks did that as part of version 11, and the majority of them, they just probably, I guess, copied the wrong command from Stack Overflow or a blog somewhere, or they were testing something. So what we did as part of version 12 is to deprecate View Engine and also remove the ability for you to create new applications with it. This would allow us to remove it in the long run and at the same time enable us to start and make the Ivy library distribution official. The Ivy library, so generally when you're building software with Angular, you're either building an Angular application or an Angular library. Since you would no longer be able to create new applications with View Engine, this makes that we'll be able to get rid of part of this legacy code. In order to completely remove it, though, we would also need to enable library developers to distribute Ivy libraries. And this is what we enabled as part of version 12 with our partial compilation. So now if you're developing an Ivy application, you'd be able to use both Ivy and View Engine libraries. But in the long term, more and more library authors are going to start distributing their packages in Ivy format, which means that you would no longer have to use our compatibility layer, that is NGCC, and you're going to have faster builds in the long run. All right, that's about deprecations. Now we can start talking a little bit about feature drops. As part of version 12, now we enabled by default Webpack version 5. Webpack version 5 is getting more and more stable over time. Originally, it had some memory, out-of-memory issues, but currently we're getting more and more confident with it, persistent disk caching as well, and people are seeing generally good results with it. We started this effort as part of version 11, and now if you're creating a new project with Angular, you'll be getting Webpack version 5. We also enabled the Angular language service by default now. Previously, we had a language service that was based on kind of view engine and custom parsers. Now you'll be getting the same support that you're getting from the Ivy compiler when you run ngserve, for example, with type checking and different semantic errors. You'll be getting the same stuff in your text editor as well. We also worked on improving better error messages. So if you hit one of the couple of 10 or 20 more most common errors in Angular, you're going to get not only the error message, but also a URL that you can follow and see a video about what this error is all about and learn how to fix it. What are the most common ways for you to proceed with it? Resource inlining, I already mentioned critical CSS and Google Fonts. And also we introduced Tailwind support. We run a survey on Twitter, collected some feedback from folks because many people really wanted post-CSS support in the Angular CLI for custom plugins. And about 95%, I believe, or 97% of folks asked for Tailwind. So it is now part of the Angular CLI if you install it as a dependency of your project. We'll be able to load it in the Angular CLI's build runtime, and from there we'll be able to process your source code with it. And now some version 12 specific features. Inline of Sass is now possible, which was originally surprising for me when I joined the team, that we had this really good story for post-CSS and Sass in external templates, but it was missing for quite some time in inline styles. So now this is part of the default CLI experience. We also have knowledge coalescing in templates, production by default, strict mode, meaning that if you're creating a new Angular application, you'll be having stricter type checking and stricter performance budgets, which means that you'll be able to catch more issues ahead of time, and you're going to have better text editor support in your browser while developing. And finally, we're redefining our end-to-end testing strategy. So we connected with Cypress, Test Cafe, and WebDriver IO in order to ensure that they're providing good integrations with the Angular CLI so that you can use them as your default end-to-end testing solutions rather than using the currently outdated protractor. All right, and a couple of community highlights. We had quite a few pull requests, and we did a way better job compared to before triaging them and merging them in. We invested actually a lot into that, and some of the most popular features that these community feature requests implemented are around adding metadata to interceptors when making HTTP requests. We also added Sono added min and max validators in forms, which is a nice enhancement on top of the current functionality. There is emit event option that is now part of all the concrete implementations of abstract control, and app initializer by Yadong, who implemented this feature that allows us now to run some logic, asynchronous logic before the initialization of our application that would trigger the initialization with the completion of an observable. And last but not least, we introduced a new tooling recently. So we have been working on Angular DevTools for about the past year. We prototyped it pretty quickly, but after that we spent about 10 months just ensuring that this product is actually valuable and useful to folks, and that it has decent integrations with framework. So currently, if you go to angular.io/devtools, you find the link to Chrome Web Store, which would allow you to install this Chrome DevTools extension that lets you debug your application by previewing your component tree and also profile it. by using our new profiler. And last but not least, wanted to also to thank to anyone who opened an issue to Angular. As of today, I think we have close to 19,000 pull requests, which is like fascinating. A large portion of them are clearly from team members, but a lot of them are also from the community. And yeah, I wish we were doing an even better job to be able to merge everything immediately. I think we're doing fine, but just wanted to, thank you for all the work and for being part of this community. I love seeing it from all different perspectives I've been in. And please feel free to leave your feedback about this talk here, and I'll love to answer your questions. Do you have any questions about Angular? Oh, there are some in the chat.
Thanks, Minko. First of all, but I was looking into the question. Anyone has any question, feel free to drop it into the chat. Or okay, so Jay has one. Optional ng module. I think Jay was asking like when is the thing, the optional ng module is going to be released, maybe.
Yeah, we started looking into this. So it is now part of the active projects in our roadmap. We started doing high-level design now. We have regular meetings where we're chatting about what would be the best way, the best APIs to introduce, so that we have interoperability with ng modules. But at the same time, if you want to develop an application without ng modules at all, you'll be able to do that. Pretty much the design right now is you'll be able to, you're going to have something called deps, let's say, in your Angular components in the metadata, where you'll be able to import other components, directives, and pipes, or ng modules. And there are different pros and cons. So let's say we're probably going to release it sometime this year, but that's still hard to commit to a date since it may have a lot of side effects, and we want to make sure that everything is coherent and not breaking.
So
there is a question about Angular support for CSS modules.
Yep.
Yeah, well, we have the view encapsulation in Angular, which provides subset of the subset of what CSS modules support, I guess. And we are also supporting the new use Sass module syntax. So this is another alternative. We haven't discussed specifically supporting CSS modules because this hasn't been a feature request that we have been receiving frequently. And we believe that the view encapsulation supports the majority of the features that CSS modules would let you use. The plan for Sander, plan for speeding up build compile times. Yeah, so with the updates to Webpack version 5, we actually noticed some regressions in compile times. There is some ongoing work there on the Webpack side of things and on our side to make sure that these regressions are no longer there, and Webpack 5 is as performant in all cases as Webpack 4, or even faster. Some improvement that is going to happen there in the shouldn't be in the long run, should be in the next couple of months, is persistent disk caching, which is one of the promises of Webpack 5. Aside from that, we have been optimizing the compiler a lot. At a certain point, the applications get really big. They grow a lot. So in these cases, I'll just recommend using decomposing them to libraries and smaller applications that you can combine together with something like module federation. There is certain threshold over which even the fastest incremental compiler wouldn't be able to do well. You need to have this library structure where you're composing your overall application with multiple small pieces, and you're building them independently. Is it a good idea to turn strict templates on a massively large application? Or is there some tool that we can use to help us with the transition? That's by Natalia. Generally, it's a good idea to have strict templates. Still, at the same time, if you have been successful without using strict templates so far, and you don't have a lot of engineering resources, you can continue using non-strict templates. Or alternatively, you can enable them incrementally over time for like parts of your project. Let's say your project is a composition of many different applications. You can enable strict templates for some of these like libraries or like applications that are part of your like bigger system, and overall you can incrementally move all of them to stricter modes. This would be my recommendation.
Thank you. I hadn't even thought of that. That's great advice.
That I was able to have.
Joe has another one. And actually, you guys can unmute and just ask. Yeah, Nat, you feel free to do so.
Thanks. There are so many questions popping in the chat that I just want to maintain the order.
That's fine. That's fine. Or you can raise a hand. I think there's a raise hand button. Yeah, I forgot to include it. So Joe has been one about the what is the progress of collaboration with other team like Cypress and like what's it? I forgot the name. Yeah, for the E2E solution.
Yeah, I think Cypress they already developed a builder for the Angular CLI, so you can use it today. Last time we checked, there was a peer dependency error, but I believe they might have already resolved it. And they also have a guide, excuse me, on migration from Protractor. Excuse me. WebDriver IO, they also developed a builder for the Angular CLI. Test Cafe, I'm not sure there specifically, but yeah, this has been moving pretty smoothly. And yeah, we're going to share them on social media as well when we find that they're like really stable. Just migrated a large Angular application using NX migrates, and your Webpack version wasn't updated. We have been looking module federation get stable and to start using it. Should the Webpack version be bumped manually after the Angular update? Yeah, you should update it manually. You can, after you update it manually, you should be able to use module federation through the community plugins. By Mateus, are there more features planned for the Devtools extension? Depending on the feature request we get, we're going to prioritize different features as well, yes. So if you want to see something, just open the feature requests, and we're going to go through the voting process that we introduced on Thursday last week, and the feature requests that people would want to see are going to land in Devtools if like they are probably going to align with our vision though. But for example, we have been thinking about showing you the injector tree in your application so that you can get better understanding of how dependency injection works. We have been thinking about the router tree as well, and maybe even visualizing different outputs that your application throws during its life cycle. Feel free to let us know what you want to see, and we're going to see how we can move forward with it. How often should enterprises update their Angular version? I'll recommend just keeping up to date with the major releases we ship. The more you keep up to date with them, the easier it's going to be to stay up to date in the future. So just a couple of weeks after we release a major, it should be safe enough to update because we have been already testing this code across thousands of projects in Google. So just run ng updates, and yeah. From there, if you hit some breaking changes, you can go to updates.angular.io, which is going to give you an overview of the different changes that we made so that you can adjust your code base accordingly. And that's it. Yeah. There is a question about able to unwrap and edit observable values. Is that for Devtools? If it's for Devtools, feel free to open a feature request.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Do you have any upcoming features in version 13 that I can talk about? Let me quickly open the roadmap. So actually, yeah, I just updated the roadmap on Friday. Like not on Friday, it was like right after the Devtools release. What to see in the roadmap for? Let me send you a link. Some of the things here are going to land as part of the roadmap, and there are going to be plenty of other small features that are just not such a large projects, so that we're making them in a like they're not part of the roadmap because it takes us, let's say, a week to implement them. They're going to be part of the roadmap as well. What I'm excited about as part of the like larger efforts is improvement of test times. This is something that we have been working on for a bit. And also improving the accessibility of Angular components. We wanted to make sure that the Angular components are pretty well accessible right now, and we also provide accessibility utilities, but we would want to guarantee even higher level of compatibility with web accessibility standards in the future. And we're currently going to release some new features around Devtools, depending on the community feature request as well. We may release even like some of the other efforts, some of the bigger projects, but it's harder to commit to a timeline when there are a lot of unknowns. For example, if we are talking about optional Zone.js, let's say, Zone.js could be optional even today with the no-op zone as part of the application bootstrap. But if we want to go a step further and provide a component level state management that is different compared to what we already have, there are a lot of things that could, there are a lot of potential side effects and implications that we need to think about. So it takes a while. I would say that the majority of the development of a new feature is we spent in planning and prototyping and making sure that we're not breaking existing applications. So that is what is requiring like more thorough implementation of some of the larger projects. Is there a way to debug in Devtools using syntax similar to ng as it worked in Augury? Yeah, you can use ng0 to ng4 to access the references to the latest like 5 different components and directives that you accessed in the Component Explorer. The ES17, yeah, the ES17 part. Well, yeah, the ES17 part is something that is part. So we'll be working on making sure that people are able to distribute their applications in ES17, ES 2017 format. So taking advantage of newer JavaScript syntax. Currently, we support ES 2015, and the level of expressiveness of the language hasn't changed too dramatically, and the need for polyfills is not significant either. So the gains there, I wouldn't say that they're going to be too significant. You're already getting a lot of great performance benefits just by shipping modern JavaScript to modern browsers. What ES 2017 is going to enable primarily is to make sure that the Zone.js are working properly with async await, because currently this is one of the limitations. I like using Redux in React as well as NGRX in Angular. Do you consider NGRX official Angular state management? We don't have official state management. I'm not working on React, so I'm not very familiar with their ecosystem, but I believe Redux is not considered official there either, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. We are providing currently the utilities for building user interfaces by composing components and also the CLI and Angular components clearly. So we're not planning to go into the state management business just yet, at least not in the form that NGRX provides it. Yeah, there's also a follow-up. Are we planning to provide official state management?
So the next thing could be the question from Stephen, like how many people are there in the Angular team, and has it grown over the last year?
Yeah, it should have grown with about 3 or 4 people, and we're hiring. I think we're hiring 2 or 3 new people right now in the Bay Area. I need to check our internal system to tell you how many exactly people we are right now. I would say about, including Googlers and people who are working as contractors, I would say about 30 maybe, or 25. We just hired a new engineering manager who is managing the Angular framework. And we hired 2 new people who joined the components and the framework team, I believe. This is in the past month and a half or 2 months. Yeah. Also, there were some people who just changed jobs, so that's how it is. Pretty dynamic. Is the async await going to be solved? Can't we move forward to ES 2018? Yeah. That's part of this project here that I'm going to share. That is in the roadmap.
Oh, it's a comment.
Is it recommended to use RX v7 with Angular 12 after upgrading? Mine is still 6.5. Yeah, it is still 6.5. We're going to enable RX version 7 in version 12.1 probably. We were in front of the dilemma 2 days before the release when RxJS 7 got released. Angular was working with RxJS 7, but we weren't sure whether there are not going to be any side effects that we're not aware of, like any consequences that are like anything that is going to break user applications. So we decided to stick to version 6 until the next minor release of Angular to ensure just that we're not breaking apps. We are going to automatically upgrade things for you in version 12.1 most likely, but if you want to use RX version 7 in your 12 application right now and you're not getting any typing errors, feel free to do that. Yeah.
Oh, so we're quiet now. Actually, like talking about the Angular team, just now, like Stephen has a question. Like, how is the process working at the team look like? Is it like you guys publish everything on the GitHub of the Angular repo, and then just assign tasks based on that, or how is it gonna look like? Of course there's an internal process as well, right? So it's not everything is publicly accessible for people.
Sorry, where is this question?
Oh, it's just my question.
Oh, sorry. Would you?
Oh, sure. It's like I just wanted to ask more about like the process of Angular team was collaborating with each other. So because it is like a public repo, so of course there's a publicly accessible information, and then of course you guys have some kind of internal meeting and process as well. How is gonna be like is it like a part of people is gonna work on the public side and some is working on the internal thing, or I just wanted to know more about it.
Yeah, it's I'll say that's 90. I actually like 95% of the development probably, maybe even more, is happening on GitHub in our 3 repos Now we also have dev infra, but primarily in the Angular monorepo, like Angular/Angular on GitHub. We also have saming components in CLI, and there are different subteams that are working on these repositories. Sometimes when we sync Angular from GitHub to Google, we're breaking internal applications, and that's when folks are spending some time to see why we're actually breaking this application. So they're doing some work internally in order to see where the breakage is coming from, to understand the Google application that we broke and see what's going on. This is some internal things, but we're usually not pushing code unless we need to revert back certain thing in Angular that calls the breaking change, or we need to update it, or we need to eventually roll out a migration that we're eventually going to make public as well if it's applicable outside of Google. Aside from that, we're trying to, maybe there are a couple of small utilities that we're maintaining for Google only, but aside from that, we're trying to keep everything just on GitHub so that it is applicable for both folks outside and inside of Google. There are a bunch of meetings that we have with other Google teams to see how we can collaborate better. I've been meeting with Chrome every other week to chat about Core Web Vitals, and mostly Core Web Vitals recently. Depending on the features that we're working on, sometimes we have cross collaboration with TensorFlow, for example, around Google I/O. Everything that we release turned out to be open source and public, but for a couple of weeks while we were working on the products, they were in private repositories because we were prototyping and we weren't sure how well everything functions. So that's pretty much it. I'll say more than 95% of things are open source. And we're trying to keep also the meeting notes open source, like make them public. In some cases, it doesn't make sense, but in a lot of cases, it does. So if you want to find our meeting notes, for instance, I think they're already accessible at g.co. And G Weekly, maybe. I'll try to find the URL and post it here.
Sure, thanks, Minko. Yeah.
There is a new question. Is the Angular DevTools going to work on Firefox or other browsers in the future? Yeah, currently it works on Edge. We haven't published it to the Edge store yet, but you should be able to install it on Edge from the Chrome Web Store. And Firefox, I saw that this is currently the most highly demanded feature request on GitHub. So we're going to do this as well. We would want to first transfer the Devtools repository to the Angular monorepo and make sure that Devtools is stable on Chrome. It works properly there. Probably we wouldn't support all the browsers because it's going to be a lot of maintenance. If someone would want to maintain support for Brave, this would be great. But my guess is that we'll be targeting just Chrome and Firefox, and clearly Edge. It works pretty well there too. ETA, I do not have an ETA just now. It depends how hard it is for us to transfer DevTools to the Angular monorepo. There are some tricky things there. We'll want to see how we can merge the history of two completely independent monorepositories, and it depends on the issue reports that we get as well. We released DevTools 2 weeks ago, so we're still collecting a lot of feedback from folks. There were some critical issues that we had to resolve, for instance, around not properly detecting view engine apps and things like that. Is it? Could you share more about your experience with DevTools, and is it critical for you to use it with Firefox, or is it possible for you to use also a hybrid workflow where you're debugging your Angular application with DevTools and using Firefox for the rest of your development process?
A hybrid could probably work. It's just, for maintainability and support for the folks that are using our app in Firefox.
Yeah.
We still have like about a few minutes left for questions. So do you still have any more questions? Just drop it in the chat or unmute yourself. We have about 5-10 minutes before the meeting ended. Okay, so Joe has one. Let's have a look at the source code.
I'm gonna unmute.
Sure.
So Minko, question about Angular DevTools. I haven't looked at the source code, but I'm going to ask, would the DevTools be applicable to build plugins for? Like, for example, if DevTools has access to the injector tree, would it be possible to develop plugins for the DevTools to make use of that injector tree? For example, I'm using NGX component store, and component store is provided at the component level. And there's a lot of requests or a lot of feature requests for component store to have like a DevTools, like a Redux DevTools. But because the component store is provided at the component level, and then multiple instances of the components, so it's not possible to have Redux DevTools as the global one.
Yeah. Yeah. Angular DevTools uses APIs from the framework in order to access the internal data structures there. So, for example, we're getting the component tree by using the ng.get component and ng.get directives methods of the global ng object. And currently, DevTools doesn't have sufficient APIs to access the injector tree. We'll be working on them in the future, but they're going to land as part of the framework, not as part of DevTools. DevTools will be just using them to make visualizations. So if you want to build tools based on these APIs, you can just use the Angular framework. You don't have to build plugins for DevTools. DevTools also doesn't have a plugin architecture, and it's probably not going to go there.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. And do you have other questions? Oh yeah, there is one.
This one's from Nat.
It was for Chao Tran.
Okay.
I totally use that. I'm sorry. It's so hard debugging NGRX, and I've asked in many meetings to Zach DeRose, how does he do that? And the answer has been time and time again, marble diagrams. I hate them. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay, then maybe we can wrap it up and do the last part about the open announcement. Thank Minko for all of the answering. And if anyone still has any question, you can just drop it in the chat and we will send it all to Minko later on.
Yeah, thank you for joining. Thank you for having me.
So actually, just a sec. Let me share the screen like 2 minutes before. Okay. Entire screen. Share now. Okay, so we are wrapping up. We have always has the open announcement for the community member to just do any kind of talking announcement about anything that you feel like you enjoy it, a new book or a job opportunity, just say hi. So if anyone feel like, Joe, go ahead, I know.
Yes. My name is Krishna. I'm from USA, Boston, Cambridge location. So I work for Akamai Technologies. We are a pioneer in CDN security and bot, for all the websites, like a caching technology. So in my team, we have like a full stack engineer positions. If anyone wants to apply, feel free to reach out to me. Like it's a full stack opportunities. We use Elasticsearch, on AWS and Java platform. And the front end, it's like Angular. We use Angular 11. Feel free to reach out to me for we have 2 positions, and we are looking for good, strong full stack engineers.
Sure, thank Krishna. I will include Krishna email on the Twitch that I will share after the meeting. So you can reach out to Krishna. On that.
Yeah, feel free to send an email. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Joe, you want to share about your small library?
What library?
The Angular. Okay.
So hi everyone. My name is Chow. I'm a new Angular GDE, and as you guys probably know, I've been working on a 3JS integration with Angular, and I'm gonna be giving a presentation here on Angular Nation, specifically Angular Africa channel, next Tuesday. So feel free to join me, learn about writing 3JS using Angular template.
Thanks, Cho. It's gonna be interesting then. I saw the code. People can go to Cho GitHub and then you can read the code. It's very, it's kind of very clean. I like it. Yeah. So also Krishna post the email and then the location for the job on the chat. So if anyone is looking for a job, feel free to reach out to Krishna. I also include his email into our tweet later on, so you guys can look for it. We still have one more minute.
I just want to announce I'm so happy to know I can still debug like I did with $ng using Augury, because I really missed that. Thanks. Thanks for making that happen with the Devtools. I had been waiting for that for quite some time already.
That's great to hear, Nat. Okay, then. So I think we have 2 news, and thanks everyone for the shout out and for the announcement. With that, I would like to end the meeting today and thank everyone for staying with us until the end. Thanks Minko once again for joining at very early in the morning, and thank everyone for contributing, asking questions, participating. It's very happening. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in the 6th of July.
Thank you, Drag.
Thanks. Bye.